is the moral panic that is ridding America. It is in the middle of America as we speak. So when I was growing up, there were a lot of moral panics. You know what I mean? I'm sure.
What's the one of today?
Today's moral panic is right-wing conservative Nazis taking over the internet. That is the moral panic of today. Prior to that, it was pedophiles on the internet who are going to try to get your children's phone numbers and personal information. I remember growing up with that.
Now, we got to get rid of those right-wingers on the internet.
I also remember the moral panic of drugs are everywhere. I remember they brought the DARE classes to school, and they told kids that drugs would make you cool if you did them. There will be people who think you're cool if you do drugs, but you can be really cool if you don't do drugs. So don't do drugs, and you can be just like us, kids. That's another moral panic I experienced. And prior to all that was the moral panic of The Simpsons, that The Simpsons was going to destroy the very moral fiber of this once great nation. And, of course, we all know that it was Family Guy instead. So it just goes to show that we don't have any idea. And prior to that, I wasn't alive for this, but prior to that was the moral panic of the Satanists and the witches who were running the preschools. You know, this is something that has happened in America over and over again. So now we're just in a new moral panic. And this one is we need to ban everything on the internet because, boy, howdy, soccer moms discovered that there's an internet and became gravely offended when people made fun of them for being soccer moms, and have now decided that the best thing for you and me and the rest of the world is to completely negate the idea of any constitutional rights of the First Amendment and to make sure that those soccer moms' feelings won't be hurt any longer.
Wait a second.
I don't mean to pick on soccer moms. It's not soccer moms. It's actually Antifa. But I like to pick on as many people as possible.
Those people from CNN and Twitter and so forth, they said that there's absolutely no censorship going on the internet. They told President Trump that.
Well, you see, what's really funny is that the government loves the idea of censorship, right? They love the idea of censorship. People don't understand this because they think that our government is constrained by the Constitution. It's not. Our Constitution was written to remind us how to constrain our government. Our government doesn't actually listen to the Constitution. If anyone's familiar with the Interstate Commerce Clause and the history of it, you would know how willing the Supreme Court is to bastardize the words of the Constitution in order to justify the federal government being involved in interstate commerce.
Well, they made their way around the Constitution with the Interstate Commerce Clause.
That's what I mean. They don't care. It's gone all the way to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court's ruled, hey, even though these people fought for a small federal government, they wrote about how they didn't want a strong federal government. They have in their Constitution the constraints of the federal government. But you know what? I think that right here, they actually wanted the federal government to be involved with interstate commerce. I know that sounds crazy, but we've, as the Supreme Court, decided that. Now, most people also don't know that the Supreme Court does not have any constitutional authority to actually interpret the Constitution on a federal level. The ability of judicial review was not given to the Supreme Court until 1818, I believe, is the year. And you can go look that up. It's called judicial review, where the Supreme Court was given the authority to dictate what the Constitution, quote-unquote, was interpreted to say. 1818 was the year. You can go look that one up. So back to what we were talking about of the moral panics that are suffering the people today. We are now in this moral panic of Nazis are taking over our government. We know the Nazis aren't taking over the government. We know that you can clearly see that there are no Nazis marching down the streets. Well, Antifa is, perhaps.
Yeah. Well, they have the same flag. It's very similar.
It is very similar. Yeah, Pantifa, always in a bunch. I don't know if you've seen that meme on the internet yet.
No, I haven't.
Yes, it's the Antifa flags, but they're flying panties instead. They call it Pantifa, always in a bunch. You've never seen that, huh?
Oh,
it's
that's so cool.
Very clever.
Yes.
I'm not that clever, unfortunately. I can only sit here and spiel out
We're clever enough to know that it's clever.
That doesn't mean we're very clever at all. So, anyways, back to what were we talking about here, John? We have a lot going on.
The moral panic.
The moral panic of the right-wing Nazis on the internet that are justifying censorship. Now, here's the thing.
Well, are we getting rid of this scourge?
No, because understand. Let me explain. We as a country, we not only have the legal understanding of free speech, but as Americans, we're supposed to have a philosophical understanding of free speech. It's something that we're supposed to practice as Americans. But what I find very interesting is how many people say that it's okay, and this is where I was going, and thank you for getting me back on track, that it's okay for private entities to censor. And this is what I was getting at earlier with how the government loves censorship. See, the government loves censorship. They love it. Man, it gets in their mouth salivating, you know? But the problem is they can't do it because they know that the people would say, this says here in our rule book, government, you're not allowed to do that. So what the government decided instead was they were going to create gigantic, massive monopolies that they would never bust up like they need to, and they would never regulate in any fashion that you would want to regulate in a monopoly, right? So instead what they've decided to do is, instead of trying to get rid of the First Amendment, they have shoved everybody into the corner of quote-unquote private internet access. And now they say, hey, sorry, guys, even though we're the ones who keep Facebook in charge, even though we're the ones who paid for the development of Facebook, and even though Facebook gets huge federal and state tax breaks, and even though Facebook essentially acts as an aggregate for all of America's and the world's opinion for that matter, we're not going to regulate it because, after all, if you don't like it, you can go build your own site. Oh, by the way, people have tried that. And you know what happens? They get their domain shut down. They get their processing powers, they get their payment processes revoked from banks. So this idea that you can just go build your own website isn't true. People have tried. People like Andrew Torba, who's invented Gab.ai, he's been attacked relentlessly. Gab isn't let on to the App Store, for example. If you want to get Gab on your iPhone, it can't be done because Apple says, well, there's bad things on your app. But there's like nudity and Nazis on your app. Well, there's also nudity and Nazis on Twitter. However, because Jack Dorsey's the one who runs that, and he has a left-leaning bias, and he is willing to censor people that the internet and the corporate media decides he should censor, he gets a free pass. But people like Andrew Torba, who have a philosophical understanding and a philosophical belief in the First Amendment and freedom of speech, those are the people who don't get allowed on the App Store because people might find that their app is more popular, their app is more organic, their app isn't going to tell you what to think. Their app is going to show you other people's opinions. That's not what the corporate media wants. And this is something very interesting, and someone pointed this out earlier today. It used to be that these big tech monopoly sites, they often would stand up for the rights of the internet. When SOPA and PIPA and TPP came out, all these big trans-Pacific partnerships, all these massive pieces of legislation wanted to come out to regulate the internet. Back in the day when the government wanted to get rid of encrypted data and things like that. This was a long time ago. Every single time this happened, Silicon Valley stood up and said, no way, you're not having it. We are keeping our internet free. Just a couple of years ago, they said we need net neutrality because we're terrified that if we don't have the government controlling the internet, then people might get booted from the internet. They said, could you imagine how horrifying it would be if independent web content creators, or not necessarily content creators, but individual website developers were able to just kick you off? I mean, it would be it would be an abomination. We'd have to let the government control this internet thing.
Well, let's clarify something about net neutrality too.
Hold on. I'm not done yet.
Okay, we'll pick up
our net neutrality thing. Okay, we can get there, okay? So what's happened is, since then, now all of a sudden, they don't stand up for that anymore. Now all of a sudden they're for censorship. These are the same corporations who 4 or 5 years ago said we needed SOPA gone, we needed HIPAA gone, we needed all of these, TPP, we needed all these things gone because it will destroy the internet. Now all of a sudden they're singing a different tune. Now all of a sudden these same corporate media types, these same internet types, all of a sudden, they're singing a different tune. They're saying, oh, what we know what we really need. We do need censorship. It's a good thing that Alex Jones has been removed from the internet. It's a wonderful, good thing.
The Silicon Valley soy boys.
Right, exactly. And so what I'm getting at is these people who are running these massive Silicon Valley corporations have been bought out. I know that sounds crazy. How could some of the richest people in the world be bought out? Well, because they've been bought out with power. The corporate media, the big government, the deep state, all that stuff, they've simply approached Silicon Valley and said, hey, look, here's the deal. We're going to do everything in our power to make sure you guys stay afloat. We'll take out your competition. We'll pass laws to make sure people can't compete with you. If we need to, we'll turn you into a public utility just to maintain your monopoly. We have no problem with that whatsoever. But all we need you to do is censor the people we don't like. We can't do it. The internet can censor anybody they want because they are technically a private entity right now until the government busts up the trusts, which is essentially what they are. We need trust busters to bust up these massive monopolies. But these monopolies have been created by government subsidies in the first place. No one wants to talk about Facebook getting like $500 million from the CIA. More than $500 million.
It's a DARPA creation.
Correct.
DARPA funded.
Correct.
It wasn't really a DARPA creation. It was stolen. The technology was stolen from Leader Technologies. It's a long story. It goes way back to, the Rose Law Firm when they were connecting. And if you know who that is, you researchers know who the Rose Law Firm is connected to. Okay, Hillary Rodham Clinton. Okay, she was a lawyer that controlled the patents. She was a patent lawyer. Okay, therefore she was able to get a hold of these patents and steal them, and that, okay, I got you off track, though. Go ahead, just kind of fill in some blanks.
I appreciate that, and that's true, and a lot of people don't understand that these big tech sites that we know of today, a large amount of them were created with assistance, financial assistance from the federal government, either in the form of tax breaks or getting tax subsidies or directly just having money funneled to them, like Elon Musk's businesses.
Yes.
A lot of people don't know that the reason why Tesla is doing bad under Trump is because during Obama's administration,
he was
Elon
funneling
Musk
money to him.
Got a whole bunch of money funneled right to him because he had all this green technology, and Obama had all these massive taxpayer subsidies that you would get if you could prove that you're doing green technology. And Obama just shoved all, not Obama personally, but the Obama administration allowed for the shoveling of massive amounts of money right into the lap of Elon Musk. Now, I have something to talk about him, too, because he was on Joe Rogan's show, I heard.
Oh, smoking a big old
blunt.
Yeah.
On the Joe Rogan show, which to me is hysterical because it's in California where it's totally legal to sit around and smoke a blunt in the privacy of your own home, which is made further funny because just, a few months ago, whenever the media comes after Jeff Sessions, they always talk about how he's this old school dinosaur politician who thinks that smoking weed is going to turn Johnny into a drug crazed homicidal maniac. And then they go on a long rant about how Jeff Sessions is totally out of touch and about how weed hasn't killed anybody. And if you can't overdose on weed, it can't be anything wrong with it. And then Elon Musk gets caught smoking weed. Caught smoking weed is not necessarily the case where he openly demonstrates his willingness to smoke some of it. Then those same media types all of a sudden turn around and say Elon Musk is unstable. He's been seen smoking the devil's lettuce. My goodness, it's another moral panic. People need to shut off their televisions. You need to shut off your internets. You need to get to your communities and your families and spend time with your priest and your pastors and things like that, because that's the only place you're going to find any real truth. Anyway, I wouldn't expect you to catch that reference. So, more to the point, though.
Was it okay? Good.
It's from Network. It's from Network. He, Mr. Beale says that. He says, go to your priests, go to your rabbis. Go to your yada yada. That's the only place you're going to find any real truth. You won't find it here. And he points at the television set. He says, "Television isn't the truth."
Maybe he's right about that.
Oh, he's absolutely. If you've never seen Network, it's a 1970-something movie.
I saw it back in the 70s.
See it today. It is more relevant today than it has ever been. There's this one scene where Mr. Beale is brought into the office of the big head honcho main guy. And he's got this amazing monologue, this guy. And he tells him, he says, "You've meddled with the primal forces of what does he say? Meddled with the primal forces of the economy or the powers or something." I remember Mr. Beale, "and you will atone." And Mr. Beale just sits there, just out of his mind the whole time, losing it. And this guy explains to him, "We do not live in a nation anymore. We don't live in nation states anymore. We're living in a multinational global world where everybody's connected. And you don't get to boss us around anymore. You are the problem. We don't need people like you because we are the corporate media. We control what people see. And people like you are driving people away from the television because you're convincing them that they need to shut off the television." If you've never seen Network, it's one of the best movies to come out of the 70s. Highly, highly recommend it.
My life has value.
That's right.
I'm a human being.
That is where the famous line of "I'm mad as hell, and I'm not going to take it anymore." That's where that line comes from.
Yeah.
So, and that's kind of, in a sense, what is happening today. This is why you have things like the #walkaway movement and things like that. People are walking away from their corporate masters. So, to further what I was saying earlier, what has happened is the corporate media, who has been able to control our thoughts for decades and decades. They are the kingmakers, essentially, in our nation. They are the ones who decide who gets elected. They didn't get to decide last time, and they are pissed about it. They are incredibly upset that they did not get to pick the last election. They're frustrated. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to buy out the people who allowed that loss to happen. So they've sat down for the last couple of years. They've gone over their notes, and they've talked to their lawyers and their executives and their investors, and they said, "Okay, guys, here's the deal. We're probably going to have to lose money over the next 5 or 6 years in order to shut down the internet. It's their only hope. Because if Twitter's going to let people like Alex Jones expose us for the liars that we are, we're never going to win the next election. So we have to shut down Alex Jones." So the corporate media says, "Okay, guys, here's the deal," because Fox is in on this too. Don't ever think that just because we're a right-leaning show that we think that Fox is innocent of the fake news that they absolutely are.
Thank you for saying that.
All right? Fox is in on it too, because people don't understand this. Fox CNN, MSNBC, ABC, all of those corporations, they all have one thing in mind. They want to continue to have their 7-digit incomes. They want to continue to live in their penthouses. They want to continue to live in their high hoity-toity, high-rise apartment buildings. That's what these people want to live in. And it's not going to be able to happen when the amount of money that they're making is being dispersed amongst a population of people who might be telling the truth. So, for example, it used to be that 300 million Americans had 5 choices of news. We already named them. Nowadays, you've got every other option in the world. You don't like MSNBC? You can go watch the Young Turks. The Young Turks aren't far enough left for you? You can go read Salon. Man, Salon's too far left for you? You can go read Breitbart. Man, Breitbart's too far right for you? You can go read something else. If Breitbart's not far enough right for you, you can go on Stormtroop Watch or whatever that right-wing Nazi website's called. Like, you can get news from anybody you want. You want to get news from some sort of lunatic? Man, you can go get news from a lunatic on YouTube. You want to get news from some straight-edged guy who's never had fun in his life? You can go to subscribe to Tim Pool on YouTube. But you can subscribe to all sorts of people that you want to, and this is terrifying to the corporate media because that means your eyeballs aren't funding their coke habit and aren't funding their aren't funding their coke habit, their drug habit, their food, and their place to live. They want to live like they're a king, and they're bent out of shape that you aren't letting them live like a king anymore. And they're really bent out of shape that people are telling the truth and getting away with it.
This has to be stopped.
This has to be stopped. And this is exactly why we saw Alex Jones get banned from every single form of social media known to mankind.
For telling the truth.
For telling the truth.
That's right.
So,
and you see, now if this was left-wing stuff, this is how they did it back in the 60s. If you don't like the stuff on the internet, well, they didn't have the internet then, but if you don't like the dirty stuff we're talking about, change the channel. Mm-hmm. But they're not saying that now.
That's right.
No, if you don't like Alex Jones, you can't just change the channel. He might influence my children. We've got to get him off. Okay, so what do we have to do? Get rid of the First Amendment? Is that what we're talking about? By the way, this is First Amendment protected snarky comments going on right now.
You see, understand that this is why the government needed to build corporate monopolies in order to create censorship, because they knew they couldn't do it. They couldn't get away with it. If they said, hey, look, you know what, guys, we as the government are going to ban Alex Jones from the internet because we're the government, well, they can't do that. It would go to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court would rule 5-4 that, sorry, the government can't do that. And it would only rule 5-4 because Gorsuch's on there right now. Like, the only reason it would be a 5-4, believe me, Ginsburg would look at it and be like, hey, look, the Constitution does not guarantee a First Amendment.
I'm afraid you're right.
That's how Ginsburg would do it. She has this really well-written response as to why the law doesn't matter. That sounds like something Ginsburg would do. Anyways.
She would have somebody else write it. I don't know if she's capable right now. I'm not sure she's alive. I think we need to see proof of life.
Have you seen those internet memes where they spraying her with Febreze?
Yes, I have.
Just kind of like, keep a couple more weeks, guys. It'll be fine.
Keep her alive for another 6 years.
This is the other interesting thing. Have you ever seen how long the lifespan is of your average Supreme Court justice?
They live a long time.
Supreme Court justices live a very, very long time.
Unless they're smothered in a pillow while they're out on a camping trip.
Yes, about that. Very, very bizarre. And that's the other thing. Anton Scalia served on the Supreme Court for decades. Was a great Supreme Court justice. He dies, and it's like, that's it. No broadcasted funeral, no half-masted, flags around town, nothing like that. It was over. So John McCain dies. And it was like
no autopsy either.
It was like a presidential funeral when John McCain died. It was like when Princess Di was killed in a car accident. It was so much pomp and circumstance for someone who was just a senator, And senators are elected, like the people elect that guy, and then when he doesn't do a good job anymore, they elect somebody else. You know
what the circus is about.
A Supreme Court justice is handpicked by the president himself and then gone through the Senate in order to see if this person is qualified for the position. And for some reason, we gave Anton Scalia like the funeral of like a goldfish, like just flush it down the toilet, And then John McCain, who's a traitor to the country. I know that bothers a lot of people, but in my opinion, hey, you want to come on my show? You want to explain to me why I'm wrong? Fine, I'm down to listen. But until then, I'm considering him a traitor to the country. This is someone who's a liar.
I want to know what he did good. Okay? Now, hey, he made mistakes while he's in the military. A lot of people died when he made that mistake, when he did that fancy thing with his jet. A whole bunch of people caught on fire and they died, whatever the thing was. Well, you know what? I don't think somebody that is a prisoner of war should be in American government afterwards because they can brainwash you. Okay. Now, if you think this is conspiracy theory, just go back to the church hearings. You can see those things back in the 70s where the CIA came clean with a bunch of stuff they were doing. Okay. MK Ultra is very, very real. Okay. It was brought over here under
Operation
Paperclip. Thank you so much. And so, yeah, this is it's verifiable. Anybody can check the stuff out. It's just not a bunch of wacko stuff. We can do wacko stuff if you want, but that's what we're not talking about here.
Here's the thing. Just because it's wacko doesn't mean you're wrong. You ever heard there's this old expression that goes back a long time. Just because I'm paranoid doesn't mean they're not after me. That's right. Absolutely. It's the same thing. Just because it's crazy doesn't mean it's not true.
Well, a lot of people need to just do their own research. They got their keyboard in front of them. Just do your own research.
This is the other thing that I was talking about. The reason why everywhere I remember growing up, you would tell people Google it. You just Google it, because the idea was that Google was an unbiased site that via its organic algorithms would render the results you want. But nowadays, if you tell someone to go Google something, well, Google is going to give you a suggestion. Google's going to perhaps tell you what they want you to
try
think.
Bing or DuckDuckGo. Don't use Google.
Yes. So here's an example. Judicial Watch. Tom Fitton has been in Judicial Watch for a while. Now, Judicial Watch, they've been around for a long time. Judicial Watch was back around in the mid and early 2000s as one of the first and only organizations to openly question the government's official story of 9/11. Judicial Watch is the organization that discovered there were no weapons of mass destruction. Judicial Watch is the organization that discovered that it was a lie about the weapons of mass destruction. They were the one who found out that the FBI knew there were no weapons of mass destruction.
And the left loved him then.
And the left loved it and said Judicial Watch is great. They've got all this credibility. So the other day, I just went to my web browser and just typed in, which is a Google Chrome browser, I just typed in Judicial Watch. And you know what Google suggested to me? Not Judicial Watch, the website, but Judicial Watch's credibility. How about that? See,
and what websites did they point you to?
Oh, Salon.
PolitiFact?
Yeah, PolitiFact, Salon, Snopes, things like that.
Snopes, yeah.
Yeah. Snopes, we've actually, a long time ago, before you were on the show, we talked about Snopes.
That is not research, by the way,
And
folks.
we actually went and did some real research on Snopes and found out who owns it. A long time ago, it was owned by a husband and wife, and the site originally was like a debunking site for urban legends. Like, someone, they put on a pair of jeans from Taiwan at some store a long time ago, and a snake bit him, and they say, that's not true. This was Snopes used to be. It was a website that you could go to look up urban legends. Well, what happened was the husband and wife got a divorce.
He took up with a porn actress.
Yeah, because he had too much money and was like, I don't want to be with someone who I built a business with. I want to be with somebody who I can live my fantasies out with because now I'm worth $1 gajillion. So he sold his business. And his wife split ways. He got in trouble, I remember, because it was some big deal. He and the porno actress that he was with at the time, it was something embezzling money or something. But then the 4 Silicon Valley types who purchased the website from him, those are the people we talked about. I don't have any of those notes on me at the time, unfortunately. I'm sure actually I have a massive, huge folder here. I'm sure the notes are in here somewhere. I'm certainly not going to go through it and try to find it because, boy, howdy, it's a big folder of notes I've got here. But we did talk about how the people who own Snopes are all left-leaning. They are all Silicon Valley millennials, and you can go look at their Twitter pages, and you can see they are very left-leaning. And these are the 4 people who currently run and operate the majority of the higher end of the management of Snopes.com. You're not going to get an unbiased opinion from these people. In fact, there's no such thing as an unbiased opinion. That's what an opinion is. An opinion is a bias. The idea that you're going to be able to listen to anything that's an opinion and it's going to give you any semblance of objectivity is totally backwards from the idea of what an opinion is. What people are really looking for is journalism. That's what people are really looking for. They're looking for truth in journalism, and they're not going to find it.
I'm not sure that's what people are looking for. Most people, anyway. Most people are not looking for the truth. They're looking for something that will substantiate their already ingrained bias that they have.
But isn't that true to them? Wouldn't they say that it is true? That would therefore be truth?
Sure.
And
sure
this is
that's what they'd say.
This is what I'm getting at. We as a society, we don't believe in truth anymore. We're living in the post-truth society these days. where everyone has their own truth. I remember
You'll hear people say that, your truth.
I was growing up, and I remember because no offense or anything, ladies, but it was always women who would say that. It was never some guy who would be like, "Well, my truth is." It was always some girl who would say that it was her truth. Well, my truth of the world is. Well, it's my truth. Well, in my truth, I don't care about your truth. I want to find the truth. What is the objective, demonstrable, repeatable, observable truth? That's what I want to know. But what I found is that most people don't believe that exists anymore. They just don't believe that exists. Like, there's no such thing.
Well, the truth is something that's elusive that we kind of have to chase after. What we can find is evidence. Okay? You could build a theory and then find the evidence to support your theory. And if you can't find it, you need to modify your theory.
Yes, facts are stubborn and immutable things.
And, yeah, some really smart guy said that.
Yeah.
It's in the Bible or something.
That sounds about right. Bill Shakespeare, I don't remember, said something real smart like that. Brevity is the soul of wit.
Well, we're not here for brevity.
That's for sure. Okay. And then that's the truth.
We got an hour of blabber. Well, let's see.
A blabbering. An hour of blabbering.
I got about a half hour left. Okay.
Yeah, okay. That's not bad, right? So that's what I have to say about the censorship in America today.
Well, do you think where do you think it's going to go? I don't think it's going to go anywhere.
Oh, you see, I think it depends on what goes on in the midterms. What people don't understand is that, and this is a real serious situation for a lot of people because they don't understand this, but democracy is the god that failed. And our country is not a democracy, and in fact, it is our desire to turn this country into a democracy that is causing this country to fail. Understand that this country was not founded on the idea that you should have a vote. In fact, most people in America couldn't vote when the Constitution was founded. Our founding fathers understood very well that the poor would always outnumber the rich, and that if given the opportunity, the poor would vote the rich into poverty.
That's why they didn't want a democracy.
Absolutely. And this is why there are all sorts of laws.
One of the reasons.
This is why there are all sorts of restrictions in our Constitution to prevent the federal government from getting involved in your average everyday life. Our founders were under the impression that by leaving behind such a document to restrict government, that we as a society would agree on the founding philosophies of restricting the strength of government. But we've totally abandoned that. We've totally abandoned that notion. And what's happened now is we've been sold this bag of goods called democracy. But democracy is what's leading to the downfall of this nation. You know, it's actually democracy's fault that the Democrats have been able to flood this nation with foreigners in order to get the votes to destroy the Constitution.
The folks need to understand out there that we are a republic, okay? The Republic of California. When you used to pledge allegiance to the flag, when that was legal, and to the republic for which it stands, okay? This is not a democracy. It was never intended to be a democracy, but yet people say that like it's a good thing. Our democracy is in peril.
Well, understand
Well, good.
that the reason why they have been for a long time saying democracy is not only to fool people into thinking that democracy is what we are, but to give this implication that democracy is moral and democracy is freedom. Now, understand, if you are a Democrat, if you're a left-leaning Democrat kind of a person, you're the biggest hypocrite I know. You know why?
Tell us why.
Because a Democrat believes in democracy, right? Did you know that democracy is quite literally the lawful philosophy that those whom do not have big numbers should be squashed? That's legitimately, think about it, 51% of the voters decide the rules. Democrats are obsessed with minority representation. Democracy is founded on the idea that the minority doesn't get representation. That is the foundational idea of democracy. You're the minority? Sorry.
Very well put. And that is why we have an electoral college. That's one of the reasons it was built in there. And after Hillary lost, people were saying, we need to get rid of the electoral college.
I remember after Barack Obama won re-election, there were all sorts of articles from BuzzFeed, Salon, Huffington Post, left-leaning organizations talking about how, hey, you know what? The Electoral College is great because if you don't recall, Barack Obama did very well in his reelection, but there were some close states that he almost did not win. And some people argue that if Barack Obama hadn't and Lois Lerner hadn't fooled around with the IRS in order to prevent Tea Party groups from getting tax-exempt status.
John McCain was part of that,
John
too,
McCain
by the way.
absolutely was part of it, yes. In fact, so I've been told he was the one who gave the top-down order to his staff in order to tell other people in the IRS, hey, you need to start harassing these Tea Party groups because they are going to start putting holes in our plans in order to destroy this very great nation. Which is why I have no way, shape, or form have any respect for John McCain. And I'm so sorry to bring it back up, but like I said, if there's anybody out there who feels that John McCain is a really great, wonderful person, I'd love to talk to you because I have a whole list of things that would disagree with you. But either way, more to the point, our founding fathers understood that democracy would bring about the downfall of the republic. This is the same thing that happened to Rome. Rome was a republic. It became a democracy, and then it failed. And Thomas Jefferson, even in reference to Rome, talking about America's future, said every great nation fails when the plurality of voters votes themselves free money.
That's
and
right.
This is why, in the original Constitution, if you were not a landowner, if you were not a business owner, if you were just some poor schmuck, you didn't have the right to vote. Because the idea was there's always going to be more poor schmucks than rich, successful people. And those poor schmucks are always going to be able to outnumber the rich people, which means those poor schmucks are always going to be able to outnumber the vote. So we can't allow poor schmucks who outnumber the rich people to control the rich people and make them poor. I forget who said it, but some real smart guy one time said that you cannot legislate the poor out of poverty. Might have been like Ludwig von Mises or one of those real smart Austrian economic type fellows. But it's true. You can't legislate the poor out of poverty. And this seems to be the mentality of the far left these days.
We've got wonderful examples of that in Venezuela and Sacramento.
Oh, well, I think of it not in
San Francisco.
I think of it just on like a philosophical, like a fundamental philosophical level, right?
People are not educated in this, and I'm so glad we're bringing this stuff up.
Well, I think of it like this. So the left believes that you pass legislation, and that solves the problem. People are getting killed by guns, make guns illegal. Man, people are poor, make homelessness illegal. It's as simple as that, right? Man, you don't want poor people? Tax the holy hell out of the poor people. Like, this is what I've noticed with the left. Like, the radical left's idea is you just pass a law. You just pass a law. It's as simple as that. Have you seen that picture on the internet of that? It's like a school in Chicago or something, and they've got all this bulletproof glass in the front that's just been totally blown away. Mm-hmm. And there's a sign in the corner that says, "No guns allowed." Woo! Did a good job. See,
well, we have a missing element in society nowadays.
It's called the brain.
It was mentioned by the founding fathers, and here it is. They are informed electorates. Okay? And that's what we don't have nowadays. And this is why they wanted a controlled media. That's why they had the media controlled. By the way, when it happened as soon as they started printing stuff up. Okay? Somebody else started printing stuff up, countering the other stuff. Oh, well, this is my truth over here. Okay, well, this is my truth here. No,
here's the thing. Let me
You
explain.
dig and you find it out. Then there was radio. They started controlling the radio.
That's the problem. That's the problem. See, this is what it comes down to. There's nothing
Federal
wrong. Nothing wrong with. So back in the day with the yellow journalism and all that. The reason why people do not understand how the history of how government regulation prevents competition. Back in the day, the reason why people like William Randolph Hearst were able to prevent competition is by buying out and eliminating competition. So, for example, way back... Rockefeller, thank you. No, Hearst. It's a true story.
I'm just saying Rockefeller did it too. A lot of other folks do.
So Hearst, back in the day, he owned the timber... he owned the timber... what's it called? Company. I can't remember the name of it, but it was huge back in the day. And they would cut down all the trees, and he would use it to print his newspapers.
Right.
Well, all of a sudden, he started getting a lot of competition because in the South... Black farmers discovered that there was a really easy-to-grow plant that could produce an incredible amount of pulp and might even put his timber businesses out of business because trees take a long time to grow. But these black farmers discovered a great crop that grew really fast, made better paper, and was better textile in general than wood.
Tell us what the crop was.
Well, it's still around, but now it's illegal. And criminal elements have decided that instead of making textiles out of it, it's better to use it to make, getting high is the best way to do it. So what happened was, basically, our current war on pot was invented back in the days of William Randolph Hearst.
Exactly right.
Because he needed a way to keep his businesses going, and the best way to do that was to stop the competition, and the best way to do that was to pass a law. I have said before, and I'll say it again, I used to say it as a joke, and now it's real. Now it's become truth. It's become a postulate. It's become an axiom in my life. The best investment a business can ever make is a congressman. And I used to say it as a joke, and now it's become absolutely true. The best investment you can make as a business is you get a congressman elected. He'll introduce legislation to make sure that your business stays afloat. It's the best thing you can hope for. So anyways, William Randolph Hearst, for a long time, was able to prevent people from having a competition with him. And this is the same thing that we're seeing today.
He also funded a tremendous film that was popular in the day, to help it on a social level.
Yeah, called Reefer Madness.
That's right.
Which is a great piece of propaganda. I implore each and every one of you to watch Reefer Madness for the purposes of understanding how propaganda and moral panics work. It's another moral panic back in the day was the Reefer Madness moral panic.
Yep.
It's got its roots down to hell. I've seen the poster before. It's very funny, very campy, very 1930-esque, very, very funny stuff, right? So what's been happening in our country is our freedoms have been slowly but surely eliminated. They've been taken away from us. And they've been taken away from us by corporate powers whom are interested in making more money. And they work in tandem with government powers whom are interested in controlling you cradle to grave.
Hey, they want to get reelected, so they're looking for money.
That's exactly correct.
Okay.
And so a big, fat, multinational corporation comes up and says, hey, look, Rubio, we understand that you really, really want to get elected. You're young, you're good looking, you're hip, you're with it.
You're great for the country.
So all we need you to do...
The country needs you.
So, little Marco, all we need you to do is completely ignore all legislation that might regulate tech monopolies. So we saw this, by the way. So Alex Jones is
all this, by the way, applies also to the medical industrial complex.
And we'll
as
get
well.
there. So Alex Jones...
That'll have to be another show, probably.
Yeah, well, of course it will. We have 20 minutes left. So, Alex, like I said, for the fifth time, Alex Jones goes to the Capitol Hill in order to basically confront his accusers, right? So Marco Rubio, who is in the Senate Intelligence Committee on the subject of tech monopolies, right? He is like in the center of this controversy, Marco Rubio. Alex Jones comes up to him and says, hey, little Marco, what are you going to do about all the censorship? And Marco goes, who are you? I don't even know who are you. Now understand, this is somebody, Alex Jones, is not only incredibly popular worldwide, but he's incredibly popular in America because he's the center of the entire censorship scandal. So Marco Rubio, who's supposed to be a representative of Americans, who's supposed to be in the know, is apparently completely unqualified because he doesn't know who Alex Jones is. See, this is what I mean. Do you think Marco Rubio got elected because of his merit? Do you think that Marco Rubio got elected because he went out there stumping for votes and telling people, hey, you know what? I want to open and free internet. I want to have a First Amendment. I want to keep your guns in your hands. No, Marco Rubio got elected because corporate backers came to him and said, we'll run your campaign. We'll run all of the pictures. We'll take the pictures. We'll get the makeup. We'll take care of everything. But all we want from you is complete silence when it comes to silencing people on the internet. You don't get to any of that stuff, okay, Marco? Sure, you're going to be on the Senate committee when it comes to intelligence and technology, sure. Just act completely ignorant, man. Just, Alex Jones comes up to you, just say, I don't know who you are. You know what Marco Rubio did? Because this is the truth of it. I know how this works. Marco Rubio knows who Alex Jones is. There's no way he doesn't. So what he was trying to do was, it's the same thing that royalty does. Oh, peasants, who are you? I've no idea who these disgusting peasants are. It's the same thing.
Remove him.
Yeah, remove this man. Remove him. Get rid of him. Which is hysterical because, journalists have no problem jumping down Trump's throat and Stormy Daniels! Stormy Daniels! Trump! Hey, Trump! Hey, Trump! Hey, Stormy Daniels! But then Marco Rubio, and they go, oh, how dare Alex Jones say anything like that to Marco Rubio? Marco Rubio's like a 22-year-old soy boy. He can't handle that kind of conflict.
He's bullying. You're banned.
You're bullying Marco Rubio. He's a public servant who gets paid, which means he's not a servant because he's getting paid. Well, either way, yeah. But that's another corporate media tactic, is to make the electorate make the elected look like they are these genius people.
Royalty.
These royalty, exactly. And that's what it comes down to. So Alex Jones has the audacity to basically stand up to American royalty, stick his finger into their chest and say, you're a coward. You're a yellow-bellied coward. You don't stand for the Constitution. You don't stand for freedom. You would get rid of it in the blink of an eye if you knew that you could. You're a coward. He says this to every single person there. He called every single person there a coward. From Marco Rubio to the CNN guy who lobbies for the tech companies to shut down people like Alex Jones. He calls each and every one of them a coward. And none of them have anything to say. What are they going to say? No, I'm not. I am a winner. They got nothing. Because they know he's right. They know they're cowards. And Marco Rubio, who's like 5'2", says to Alex Jones, who's like 6'1" and 300 pounds, well, I'll take you out myself, he says to Alex Jones, which is just absolutely adorable. I would pay... my whole month's worth of pay I would pay for just back row tickets for the fight of Rubio versus Alex Jones. I would love to see that fight. It wouldn't even last one round.
It wouldn't.
Alex would, one punch, just take out Rubio. He'd be down on the ground. All of his fans would be throwing their panties up. Oh, Alex, you're so great and wonderful.
It wouldn't be that good of a fight.
Oh, no, it wouldn't be that good of a
Nah.
fight. But people would be happy because Alex Jones is doing what real journalists ought to do. Jump down the throats of our corporate and media and political masters and demand answers for their dissatisfactory job. And that's what we should be getting. Journalists have no problem jumping down Trump's throat. They got no problem jumping down Sarah Huckabee Sanders' throat. They got no problem jumping down Elon Musk's throat. They got no problem whatsoever. But when it comes to anybody on their side or anybody who toes the line, because that's what it comes down to. Because there's people on the right, there's people on the Republican side, the never-Trumpers and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Those people all toe the line, and guess what? They're not getting audited. They're not getting shut down by Twitter. They're not being silenced by Facebook. But when you see people who are vocal about it, when you see people who are openly against the establishment, like Prager University, for example,
Yep.
they get shut down immediately.
They're shadow banned.
In fact, Facebook last week, I remember it was a couple weeks ago, Prager University posts a picture where they're like, hey, so here's this video, got 1 million views. Here's this video, got 1 million views. Here's this video, got 18. And then here's this video, got 12. Here's this video, got 13 views. Like, we are clearly being censored.
So we know something's going on. Yep.
Well, apparently it would have, some big head honcho came out and said, oh, we're so sorry. That was just a computer error.
Yeah.
It was somebody.
Just a glitch.
It was their first day, and they just hit the wrong button, and you just didn't get any views. Sorry about that, Prager University. We'll fix that for you. And supposedly they did. But this is what happens time and time again. And what's amazing is how often emails do not get retrieved for Judicial Watch because of a computer glitch. I read about it all the time. About once a week, the government says, "Oh, sorry, we lost all those emails. There's a computer glitch." Oh, sorry, we lost all those documents. There's a computer glitch. Oh, sorry, we lost that court case. There's a computer glitch. All the time. It's computer glitches all the time. You know, we pay these people like $1 jillion to make sure that there aren't computer glitches. We have the highest bitchiness computers that money can buy. We have bajillions of dollars that we spend every year to make sure that we got the highest technology on the market. But boy, howdy, all those glitches. You know, I know your computer doesn't have that kind of a problem. I know that public libraries don't suffer from that. I know that the Library of Congress doesn't have that kind of a problem. But boy, howdy, the FBI, boy, we'd have a real hard time keeping our hands on those documents because those computers, they're just glitching out all the time. It's crazy over here at the FBI.
How stupid do they think we are?
Well, here's the thing.
Well, you know, they keep it from us,
Here's
so
the
we
thing.
don't even know that there's an issue.
They know we're stupid, and they've made us stupid because they have guaranteed 13 years of government-mandated stupidity shoved down your throat. And this is with the
Government-mandated stupidity.
Oh, that's what the school system
Well,
is.
you know what? And I love saying that you want to hear about mind control? Information control is mind control.
Absolutely.
And if you're suffering from getting information, you've got a suffering mind.
And this is how the school system has destroyed a generation of kids.
It continues on in adulthood.
Well, of course.
Just watch the football game.
So what I see these days,
Drink some beer and watch the game.
the youngest generation right now is the most conservative generation in American history. I suspect the reason why is because this is the first generation who actually has a real education. In like 3 generations, this is the first generation to have a real education where they can get on the internet and they can get multiple opinions from multiple different sources, from multiple different people, all from different backgrounds to come to what they think is the best conclusion. And you know what's amazing is they've all come to this, many of them, the majority of them have come to the same conclusion, that the farther right we lean, the better the government is going to work. The cleaner it's going to work, the more efficient it's going to work.
The less government we have,
That's right,
the
less
better it
government.
is.
Now, what's funny is that a lot of people think that if you lean right, you become a Nazi. The Nazis were National Socialists. They were a far left
They
party.
were socialists.
They were
yes.
socialist party. They were a far left party.
So
Most people
very
understand
close
that.
cousins to Russia.
They are 2 sides of the same coin. I remember growing up in school by the corporate masters. They taught me, they lied to me, and they taught me that the opposite of communism is fascism. They're the same thing.
Completely not true.
They are absolutely the same thing. It's just different ways of achieving the same ends. It's different means for the same ends, but it's the same idea. A totalitarian government where you're controlling
all the
grave.
people.
That's exactly what it is. But they're not, once again, our corporate masters don't want us to know that in school. This is why right now they're trying to shut down the internet.
They're giving us a Hegelian dialectic.
This is why they are
school.
giving us the moral panic of parents. You got to get your kids off the internet. We got to ban these people off the internet. We got to censor the internet. We got to scrub the internet. The internet's got to be as clean as a whistle, or else our children might not take to the indoctrination. Now, this is what I was getting at. The reason why people are stupid in America today is because they went through 13 years of government-mandated education. Now, understand, there is no, in any way, shape, or form, there is no constitutional authority for the government to force you to get an education. There is no constitutional authority for the government to force you to force your kids to get an education. There is no authority whatsoever in the Constitution for the government to have any semblance of forced education. But you'll never, ever, ever in a million years see the federal government be taken to court, especially the Supreme Court, over something like education. And it's because it benefits the whole government. See, the entire government benefits when they control your education.
That's right.
Because, like I said earlier...
This is John Dewey was a communist,
like
by the way,
earlier,
and he's the one that started that whole thing.
The government is only interested in more control, and corporations are only interested in more money. They work in tandem with each other in order to get more money and more power. And therefore, it removes power from you and me and money from you and me. That's how the system works. It's not really too complicated. It's pretty simple.
Oh, yeah, it's pretty simple, all right. But
So,
just keep in mind
what
that I want to
happens
throw
is-
this in here is that one of the planks of the Communist Manifesto
Is public education.
public education provided to you by the government.
Absolutely. And the reason why is they need to be able to control how you perceive the world.
Information control.
Absolutely. So what's happened is our government, I remember growing up in school, and I don't talk to any of my friends that I knew in high school anymore. It's unfortunate. I wish that I did, because I'd like to talk to them about what they remember in school. Because I remember going to school, and I remember being at the charter school here in town. It doesn't exist anymore. It only existed for like 4 or 5 years. That was one of the few graduating classes that actually made it out of the charter school. I remember in our sociology class, which was also our English class, there were a couple of people up on the wall, pictures of them. And one of the people up on the wall was a picture of Karl Marx. And I remember in our sociology class in my senior year of high school, we learned about Karl Marx as a sociologist. I kid you not. I have vivid memories of my teacher, whose name I will not say because I would get in a lot of trouble if she ever heard of it, but she said that we are going to study Marx as a sociologist, as somebody who perceived people as groups. Sure, he may have been wrong about communism, but that's not what's important. We're going to study him as a sociologist. That's insane to me. Because the man's ideas were not only totally backwards and absolutely wrong on every capacity, but the man never owned a business in his life. He never worked a day in his life. His children starved to death because he refused to work. I mean, this is a bad human being with terrible, terrible genes, whom, thank Darwin, did not reproduce successfully. Now, when we look at the world today, we're being taught that people like Karl Marx were brilliant philosophers. These people were great thinkers, ahead of their time, true humanitarians who cared about what was best for everybody. I have seen...
Except for the ones that he killed.
I kid you not, there's a video of this guy, I forget his name, but he's in his 50s, and he grew up in the Soviet Union. He lives in America today, and he's got a very heavy Russian accent, and he goes to these far-left rallies, and he asks people, what do you like about socialism? What do you like about communism? And they all say, I like the idea I don't have to work. I like the idea that I get fed. I like the idea that nobody starves. And he says, I come from a communist nation. And it didn't work that way. Everybody starved. No one had an education. Nobody was free. You weren't allowed to grow your own food. If they found you growing food, they would destroy it because you weren't allowed to grow your own, because that wasn't fair unless you were going to share with everybody else. But they knew you weren't. And what's amazing is he then mentions the Holodomor. And there's this stupid young college girl there. And he says, you ever heard of the Holodomor? And she goes, that was just a stupid mistake. It was just a stupid mistake. And he says, mistakes don't kill 10 million people. It's not a mistake that there was an organized famine to starve out 10 million Ukrainians. It was not a mistake. And she says, yes, it was. It was just a mistake. People didn't know what they were doing. And that's what this comes down to. These people have been so brainwashed. And understand, no offense to a lot of parents, but parents are so uninvolved in their children's education these days that children grow up basically being taught straight communism from the schools. Straight up communism from the schools. And the parents, they have no idea. They don't care. Most parents don't even care.
They don't even know the definition of communism. They have no idea.
Well, look, if
they're
you're
offered
so
only two
stupid,
things. They're offered
if you're so
fascism.
stupid that you think Nazis, which stands for a National Socialist, if you think that the National Socialists are somehow a right-leaning party, That's proof of success of mind control.
Okay, this is why I say it's a Hegelian dialectic. They offer two socialistic methods in school. One is National Socialism, and the other is Communist Socialism, which really is no different. Okay, it's all totalitarianism, and it's all about controlling of the people.
Yes.
And if you don't comply, you die.
And this is what the education system for America is today. It has been invented for the sole purpose of perpetuating the idea that truth comes from authority, that repetition is intelligence, and that having the right answer means looking in the back of the book, but not telling the teacher that that's where you found the answer. I remember a long time ago I heard this great TED Talk from this really smart guy where he explained the problems of the education system. And he said that the biggest problem we have in the education system, not the biggest, but one of the big problems we have in the education system, is that kids are taught that you can't talk to each other, you can't share answers, you have to come to the same conclusions, and that there is only one answer, and it's in the back of the book, and don't you look, because that's cheating. Now understand, this is completely contradictory to real life.
Right.
In real life, talking to each other, and especially in a scientific community, is necessary for the furthering of scientific discoveries. People, when they're atomized and judged in an individual level and not in groups, people always come off stupider than how they behave in a group, because people can do more in groups. We're social animals. Our entire school system is set up to atomize people in order to put them apart from other people, to judge people on a level of how well they accept the authority figure in front of them.
Right.
Now, I was in school, and I have always been very gifted with academia. And I've said this before. People ask me, Tyler, why didn't you go to college? I don't go to college because I didn't leave academia behind. Academia left me behind. Academia is no longer about the academy. It's no longer about intelligence. It has been hijacked by far leftists whom are using the authority from those establishments in order to inculcate in children the notion that communism is not only moral and virtuous and righteous and good, but that it is the future for the world. The entire world can live in peace if we just got rid of those evil, white, narcissistic, capitalistic pigs. Right, comrades? Hey, comrades! Hey! Austin.
So
We won.
Oh,
right, no. Yay, capitalism.
Well, you've seen clips probably of Robert Reich.
Oh, yeah, I've seen 4'11" Robert Reich.
Yeah, I mean, this guy is also
Hard to see. He's 4'11", but I've seen him.
Well, he looks bigger on video, but
Well,
he's
it
a
doesn't,
guy.
right? I sent it to my wife.
So
But yeah.
Anyway, so we've got this guy who he is a communist, he's a socialist, whatever, and
Absolutely.
he is a college professor.
Yeah. A good friend of mine, actually, who went back to college because he didn't have anything else going on in his life, was trying to talk to me about how Robert Reich is just so smart. Well, Robert Reich, we talk about Robert Reich in class, and I'm telling my friend, like, no, dude, you're totally off base. We haven't talked. We haven't spoken since then. I basically told him, like, look, you're totally wrong. You're absolutely wrong. Communism is wrong. You're being lied to. Your professor's lying to you. Well, I'm taking a class on rhetoric. I'm learning about rhetoric. Basically, that's the class on propaganda. So that should just be called Propaganda 101. And just like, okay, what's the goal, teacher? Well, my goal is to propagandize you until you are a good, faithful communist. Just about the time you're ready to start hurling bricks into buildings, that's when I know that I've done a good job teaching you.
Oh, let's see. We're going to give you two choices, though, communism or socialism.
I believe it was Ayn Rand who said that the goal of socialism is communism, just slower.
Yes. A communist is just a socialist in a hurry.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Is that what it is? Yeah,
That's what it is. Socialism, they want to vote. They want to do it through voting, and then that's socialism. Communism, they just want to do it through revolution and open revolt.
Yes, and that's kind of what's happening now.
And there was a guy back in the 50s that wanted to do that. Late 40s, by the way. His name's Guy Hill, and he ran as on the Socialist Party in the 70s. And guess who voted for him?
John Brennan.
Yeah.
How about that? That CIA guy.
Yeah,
fascinating.
Isn't it great that we have a guy in the CIA that's a communist? Yeah,
This goes back to Operation Mockingbird, where the CIA
Exactly.
wants to, or the CIA or FBI would control what goes on in the mainstream media in order to portray to the American people what the proper way to vote is.
Information control.
Right, exactly. This goes back to what we were talking about. So, all right, that's it. That's all the time we have tonight. That's it.
That's it.
That's it.
Well,
that's our hour.
Great show.
Yep, good job, everybody. Super proud of you.